Cool. Hey everybody, how you guys doing? George here from Discover God. I got a friend with me today that I met on Slack on this really cool community that we're both a part of. It's called Faith Tech. It's my guy Ryan. Ryan, he wears a couple different hats, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself. And we're gonna be talking about faith, and we're gonna be talking about video games. So Ryan, do you want to just tell us who you are?
Yeah, for sure. On the topic of video games, I do run a video game development company that I founded called Eden Industries. I created it about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and I've sort of been making video games full time for 15 years now. So it's been going on for a while. And yeah, as you mentioned, we met in the FaithTech Slack channel. I'm also the city director for FaithTech Vancouver. So organizing all of the sort of, FaithTech, events and community for that here in Vancouver. And then another just interesting fact about me when it comes to faith, actually I have a great interest in apologetics, and I teach an apologetics class for my church locally and sort of, I guess, around the world now via, Zoom, and everything's online. So like you said, yeah, I wear a lot of hats. I try to get involved in a lot of things. I love working and doing and building, and that definitely informs my work making games, and also sort of how I try to live out my faith as well.
That's so cool. Can you tell us a little bit about your? I want to get into the video game stuff, but can you tell us a little bit about your role with Faith Tech, and like kind of what does that really mean and look like? I know you said meetings and stuff like that, but there's a lot of like insights and reports and stuff like that happen as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I actually am very new to the role as of about a month or so ago. So I'm still, kind of learning the ropes myself, actually. But yeah, principally, the Faith Tech community organization is really about bringing together, people of faith who also either work in technology or have a keen interest in technology, and so basically the role is to sort of facilitate that community, right? And so to that end, we, kind of do a lot of things. We'd have monthly meetups. I do sort of, contact people, just kind of chats like this, kind of just meet them, see, kind of who they are or where they're at in their life, what they're passionate about. Because another part of what we do is this thing called labs or projects, where we kind of bring together people with, various skill sets, and we build things. We do, cool things. For example, we're making a kind of interactive website where people can basically like sign up like a street in their city and pray for that street. It's sort of an initiative by one of the local churches here. They want to kind of like have 1 week where they cover the whole city in prayer. So we're kind of working with them on that. Other sort of, apps to and websites to, everything from stopping human trafficking, for helping kind of youth leaders in the community kind of, log their work with youth, helping, organize and get medical hospital equipment to places in Africa that need it. So, I mean, it really runs the gamut in terms of what these projects are. But that's a big part of what FaithTech does, is really just say, hey, you know what? We are Christians and we love tech. Maybe there's somewhere these things can overlap here. Maybe we can actually, again, live out our faith in practical ways and help people. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that go on. And I'm just kind of trying to organize it all. And I mean, I don't, do all those things. I'm not, making all those projects, right? But I'm, trying to organize and help make sure that, we're moving forward and just, I think, just kind of facilitate the community.
Do you know what? I love that, because I definitely think that like connecting people is something that I've definitely seen like that the Slack community do, right? Like you just start seeing people and meeting people, especially when people join the group. They kind of introduce themselves, like this guy's from all the way over there and he does something I've never heard before, but it's really cool, right? And then you see people connecting with that person. And I definitely think like networking is a big thing, right? And I think that when you start to talk about like technology and the Christian faith, some of the projects that you said, it's a wide range, right? So the possibilities are like endless. Yeah. You covered a whole bunch of different stuff. It's not necessarily like something in a box. It's like anything, right? Anything faith, anything tech, let's do it. I think that's really cool. I didn't even know about the prayer thing for the streets. I think that's really cool. I love that. I think that's powerful. That. Do you want to tell us a little bit about like your video game role that you do? Do you want to get into that for us?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, I started, I suppose, like a lot of people, I was, a programmer at a game company for a few years. I was a game designer at another company. And eventually I thought, I have enough stuff going on in my head. I got to get it out into the world. I'm going to make my own company. And so, like I said, I did that. I've been doing it full-time, my own company, since the start of 2012, which is what, nine years, something like that, right? Almost 10, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sort of my, I guess, background is, programming, game design. So I do a lot of that. But of course, as the founder of the company, again, you wear a lot of hats in that role too, right? So I'm managing the team. I'm, negotiating with publishers and distributors. For our last couple of games, there's a lot of dialogue, like about 80,000 to 100,000 words in the game. So I wrote most of the dialogue.
Wow.
Because it's kind of this, like, well, someone's got to do it. It's sort of my vision for the game, like, so it's sort of, a bit of it my voice anyway. So it just, so I do that. And yeah, basically just make sure, again, I get talking about community. I'm bringing together a community of game developers, artists, animators, audio guys, programmers, so on and so forth, bringing them together and just seeing if, I can sort of lead with that vision of like, this is what we got to do, pull all these, disparate kind of disciplines together and put something out in the world that hopefully people are going to enjoy it. So
that's really cool. I love that. Yeah, if it was me, I would just put like my voice on all the characters. Yeah. Yeah. Nobody would play that though. Yeah. I'm just joking. I wouldn't do that. So I guess like the real question, right, that I want to get into with you is, as a Christian, how do you, I feel like we're kind of like in an interesting time, right, where you're kind of starting to see Christians engage in the space of video games more than ever before, right? Like it's a developing field, kind of a trend that is definitely growing. For me personally, something that I noticed is that there's a lot of like kids video games, right? Like for children, and they got loads of downloads. And I count like a children's Christian video game as anything that has like gamification, mini games, or like like an actual game. So like examples would be Guardians of Ancora. There's one from the Christian Broadcasting Network called Superbook. They have like a bunch of little mini games in the app. And then the obvious one is like the big one is the Bible app for kids. And when you look at the download numbers, you're talking about like over 50 million for just one of those. And they obviously have like different mechanics and different metrics to in their own way kind of determine if and when children have, I guess, like responded to accepting Christ in their lives. And I guess my point in all of this is just to say that I kind of feel like the future of our children or the younger generations, the way that I feel like they will get to know Christ is going to be through some type of video game or an app. And I think that's really significant. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that is major, because when you start talking about 50 million downloads, you would be hard to find a preacher or a church that has anywhere close to that type of engagement. Obviously, that 50 million downloads is not unique users. That does not mean, responses. Responses would be a fraction, but it's something significant, I think. So for me, I say all that just to say this, that the future, right? And I mean like the future in like 2, 3, 5, 10 years, even today, evidence points that, video games are going to play a significant role in, introducing children to Jesus. And what I would like to see with what I'm doing with my project is actually see projects for older age groups, because those apps that I mentioned, they're like for like age 4 plus. So I've shared my thoughts. What do you think? Like, where does faith, video games, how do they intersect? Do they intersect? Is there a future in all of this? What do you think?
Yeah, I basically agree with everything you said. The thing is like, the Bible itself, the physical book, I mean, this is enough for salvation, obviously, right? It's not like we need video games or else the message of the gospel is hopeless Of course not, right?
Absolutely.
Right. But at the same time, like we even see examples in the Bible, like when Paul went to speak to, the, pagans, right? And, he used their philosophers, like he engaged their culture where they were. And I think we, forget about video games, like we see this all the time, right? Christians make music and books and movies, and no one questions that, right? They're like, of course they're doing these things, right? Well, although we say that now, that wasn't even always the case for these things, right?
True.
So I would say one thing. I do think the church tends to be a bit behind the eight ball when it comes to cultural engagement. And I think there's some like reasons for that, but I think there's more reasons why the church should really get engaged in culture, right? I mean, this is what Jesus said, like, I'm calling you into the world, not out of the world, right? And so video games, they definitely are like the sort of ascendant or arrived, kind of, big dominant cultural thing these days. Like you said, 50 million downloads of a single app. Like, yeah, games are here to stay and they're only growing. And so I think it really is incumbent upon the church to take that seriously and just say, how can we engage this culture in a way that, is going to speak to the people of today who are, we'll just be honest, our culture is not the same as it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. And so we need to, again, not change the gospel, but reach people in the culture of the day. I think that's important. And we have a unique opportunity because with games, it's really easy to reach the whole world, right? I think we sort of saw this in a way. I think, COVID was a bit of a wake-up call for churches where they're like, oh, actually, we can do ththings online. Like we can reach people anywhere, which, kind of everyone was like, yeah, that's, obviously, but, sometimes you need a bit of that wake-up call. And I think that's the same thing at games. Anyone can make a game and anyone in the world can download it and play it. And so the sort of missional reach of Christians engaging in this space is unprecedented and uncomparable to anything else, I think. And so it really is a fantastic sort of fertile ground to reach people. And I think what you said is true. We need more than just kids apps, right? We need the whole spectrum, right? So it's fantastic. I have the Bible app on my phone where I can read my Bible. Perfect. Awesome. With just kids apps, we need everything in between. And I just think the more we have out there, you're going to, like you said, not everything is going to reach every person, right? So you need this little bit for that person. But the thing is, like, again, Paul said, become all things to all men, you might win some to Christ. We need to just hit it all, I think, as a church, as a community of Christians, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's so good to hear you say all that stuff. You know what I mean? And again, I agree with you as well. And I think that, like, I think we've talked about this before, where it's like, you kind of said it, right? Where Christians are behind, right? Not only like in culture in general, but really specifically when it comes to video games. I feel like when you really try to bring up the topic of video games in church or to Christians, the reactions are often like a knee-jerk reaction, right? It's often very negative, and it's like, nope, they're addicting. Nope, that they got like evil things in them, and some of them do. Like, there's obviously different genres of video games, different topics of video games, but I guess my question would be like, how can we overcome that, right? Stereotype, right? I guess, of video games are bad. Video games do not belong in church or in Christianity. Like, what could be kind of like a process or maybe some steps that we could take? Is it, I guess, kind of like what we're doing, starting conversations around the topic, educating people about this stuff? What do you think how can we break that barrier down?
Well, I think the first thing is just to look at the parallels, because the same conversations were around music and movies, right? I mean, we don't have to go even back that far to find churches that said, hey, if you go to the movie theater, that's a sin. You can't go see movies, right? And now, of course, no one thinks that. But so if we just look at the history of the church and all these sort of cultural, types of media, we're going to see the exact same conversation every time. So at a certain point, we should probably be able to be like, look, we've already had this conversation. We skip a few steps here, But I think even beyond that, like, again, kind of what I was saying, like, it's incumbent upon the church to engage the culture and just to be like, oh, sure, there's, how many millions of downloads, how many billions of people playing games. no, not for us. Not like, I honestly think like this is, I mean, I don't want to go maybe so far as to call it sin, but certainly very foolish to just be like, no, forget it. That's like, I really think this is not what Jesus called us to do, to just be like, no, we're going to ignore all that. Like, it's no, I think we really, I think we see this in time and time in the Bible. Like, it's, we're called to do everything we can to reach people, not just to be like, yeah, this whole segment of culture is just no, we should go into that space and like, reclaim it for God, not just abandon it. Like, because basically what you're doing is sort of twofold. One, you're abandoning all of the people who engage with that cultural, idea mode, right? But also you're abandoning the people who are working in that industry. Like, we need Christian game developers, not just to make games, but to witness to Christian game developers. There's been so many times where people basically, when I used to work at companies, at first the idea that I was a Christian was just bizarre to them, But as they got to know me, like, for example, one guy said to me, hey, Ryan, if more Christians were like you, I would be a Christian, which is the wrong reason to be a Christian. But what it shows, right, is he doesn't have any good Christian influences in his life because he's not walking into a church. So you don't need Christians in the culture just to make cultural products. You need it to be around those people because they also need to hear the gospel.
That's really good. Yeah, I think that's something that I've not really thought of. Is kind of like there's a concept, right, of like Christians in the workspace. And I think that in that workspace, there's probably like a lot less Christians than like, there is in accounting or whatever other example you want to compare that to, right? And I think that's actually something significant. There's like a governing body in the UK. It's called UKI, where they kind of like oversee everything video games. And the lady who is in charge of that, the CEO, I don't remember the quote like word for word, but she said something along the lines of, the video game industry is run or formed or whatever by some of the most innovative, creative people in the world, and you combine that with some of the latest technology, and you get very, very powerful, unique experiences. And I think that I'm using that and now connecting that to what you just said. It's really important that actually those types of people like you, create like, you hear the word Christian creative thrown around a lot, but this is a different type of creative person, right? Like somebody who can forge a video game environment. I think it's really important for those people to know Christ, to know Jesus, and to go off of the first point that you were talking about. What I hear you saying is that, we have to take the gospel to them. If they are in digital spaces, if they are in video games, if that is where I'm not going to say young people because everybody plays video games, right? Like statistics show that like literally everybody plays video games. But if that's where these people are at, that's where we take the gospel to them, right? Like it is no put the controller down and then come to church. Actually, I think what I hear you saying, right, is like, we're going to pick up the controller and take the gospel to them. And I think that like, I love that. You know what I mean? Because inwardly, I cringe when I hear pastors or youth pastors say that like video games suck, don't play video games. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, what are you doing, right? Like, literally, you just lost half your audience, right? Because like, nobody's going to, like, I don't know how many people would stop playing video games because of something like that said from the pulpit. But I can't imagine that being very effective. But no, I think that's really, really good. Listen, do you have anything else that you want to share, say, anything else that you got on your heart, anything that you just want to share that you got coming up or anything like that?
I just say, I really encourage people to pray for, Christian game developers, for the industry. Like you said, that, there's not a lot of Christians making games. I think it is a really important, sort of cultural, phenomenon in some sense, right? Like if you look at the growth over a few decades, it's really unprecedented. And so it really is a space where we need, Christians at work, or at least, we need God's help to make a positive cultural impact. And so yeah, I just encourage people to pray, for, like, Jesus says, right? Pray for God to send workers, right? The harvest is
Mm.
plentiful, the workers are few. I think that's true in games, right? Like you said, millions of people are playing games. There's not a lot of workers able to capitalize on that. So I just say, pray for God to move in that space. Yeah, I would just encourage people to, even beyond the idea of games, right? This idea that, like, I just think um, anything we can do to, capture something and turn it to Christ and use it for good is amazing, right? And so whether it's games or, I say, music or movies, or, one time I heard a pastor say, that rap music is evil. You can never have that preach the gospel. Like, these kind of ideas, like, this is just limiting what we can do. But really, it's about just taking everything we can, giving it to God, and reaching as many people as possible. And so I just encourage people to just think about, yeah, what they can do. Maybe it's not games, maybe not making a movie, but we can all do something.
Yes. Amen. I love the that word you use, the phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I agree with you. I think that is a good word to use to describe video games, and I think that it's exciting to think that actually there's a potential for there to be a phenomenal move of God,
Mm-hmm.
right, in that space. And I think that's something that we should all really work for, pray for, and look forward to, because I definitely think that it's inevitable, right? I think that
Yeah.
it's the future. So listen, Ryan, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your knowledge, your wisdom, your insights. If people want to get a hold of you, if people want to check out any of your work, where can they do that at?
Yeah, sure. So Eden Industries is my company. So our website is just edenindustries.ca. We're in Canada, so we have the good old .ca there. But they can also look up Eden Industries on Twitter, or those kind of social media type things. And yeah, that's kind of the best way to kind of keep track of what we're up to, and contact me if they have anything. So yeah.
Great, amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, watching this video. Get a hold of Ryan. He's a cool guy. Go on FaithTech Slack group. Talk about video games with us. We're there. And anyways, bless you guys. Bye now.